possible action that could be taken to help alleviate the problem and also plan for the future. So it was a very productive meeting. We learned a lot from each other, particularly our property owners, who identified an array of problems, including destruction and damage of private property, trash, debris, and defecation along the river, marijuana plants growing on the river, and evidence of illegal drug use, needles, syringes, and so on being left in the encampment sites. So as a result, Kathleen Stone, who will be speaking with you in just a moment, who is our homeless services coordinator, she agreed to work with our community-based organizations. And as you know, we have a homeless services planning group that's been meeting for over 15 years. So we have a very, very tight-knit group that meets on a regular basis. And Kathleen is connected with them to specifically identify some actions they could take in support. Also, our HHSA Community Health Director, Stacy Cryer, was present. She identified staff who might be able to assist in the river cleanup, particularly with hazardous waste in the form of the drug paraphernalia. And then Sheriff Tom Allman was present, and he came very prepared with some very concrete suggestions and some action steps based on some successful interventions they've had, particularly in North County. And Kurt Smolcom is here today, and he'll share some information with you about that. One last thing I want to say is that I think we found this meeting, which we've referred to as the River Summit, extremely helpful, and we're planning on meeting again. Well, basically, we'll meet as we need to, but in particular, we'll be meeting next spring to prepare in advance. Instead of needing to be reactive, we want to see if we can be more proactive and get this group together in the spring to prepare for this. Really, the landowners were very clear. We aren't looking at our local homeless individuals that we are working with in our human services delivery system. They are seeing a very transient population, and they're very clear and confident with that communication to us. So we have to have different strategies with that group of individuals, and I think we've come up with some good ideas. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Kathleen Stone, who we're very fortunate to have at Human Services as our homeless services coordinator.
Thank you.
Hello. So I am the coordinator of homeless services in Mendocino County under Health and Human Services. We contract out our services to our community-based organizations. We administer programs from HUD, but then contract them out to these community-based organizations. We continue to provide support to them and training and all kinds of logistical help in implementing those programs. One of the things that we do, that we did actually in cooperation with the board several years ago, was create these homeless resource guides, and they're geographically, the blue ones are the coast, the orange ones are inland, the green ones are North County. We also have outreach workers within the county and with the community-based organizations to go and make contact with homeless people that are throughout the county. The goal of the programs and the CBOs is to connect homeless people with services that we have. Some of those services are shelters. We have a 64-bed shelter in Ukiah, a 24-bed shelter in Fort Bragg. We have motel vouchers for people who are very ill or elderly or families with children who can't access the shelter for some reason. We've got case management services and life skills classes that we offer to people who want to address the reasons that they're homeless, some issues that they're facing. Limited transitional housing for homeless people who want to move into permanent housing. And then we have 134 vouchers for people who were homeless, which is permanent supportive housing if they could not be self-sufficient on their own. The CBOs that we contract with do not provide recommendations for people who aren't accessing these about where they can go. They do provide people with sleeping bags and bedding if they can't access the shelters for some reason, but they never direct them to camp at the river. And they are somewhat resistant to saying don't camp at the river because that's like giving a clue that the river might be a place that they can go. So we don't tell people where they can go, but they do provide, the county does not, but the CBOs do provide some bedding for people who might suffer from exposure otherwise. We tried doing a campground referral program, but the problem is without oversight of that program, then the behavior at the campground can get out of hand and it can become a very unsafe place to go. So we don't do campground referrals anymore. The people who aren't ready to access our programs, they may go to the campgrounds, they may be using the bedding, and we all rely on the law enforcement intervention to provide a safe community for the people who are homeless that aren't accessing services, as well as the rest of us. So that's what we have to offer and the work that we do with our community-based organizations. And all of the organizations work with law enforcement to the extent that they can to provide safety for the people that we're working with. And again, as Susan said, we're planning on not waiting until this is an issue on the river again next year, but we want to get together early next year and talk to the property owners and work on preventing camping along the Russian River and some of the dumping that's gone on there this year, prevent it from happening early in the year. That's all I have.
Questions of Ms. Stone? Okay.
Thank you.
Captain Smolcombe.